Dear God, I'm ready for your help in removing from me the defects of character which I now realise are an obstacle to my recovery. Help me to continue being honest with myself and guide me towards spiritual and mental health. Amen. It is with much love and gratitude that the group welcomes Beth E. to come and share with us. Beth, it's over to you.
Thank you, Bertie. My name is Beth, and I am a cocaine addict. So it's customary where I'm from to give you my statistics. A loving God that I didn't think that I needed, got me sober on August 1st of 2017. And for that, I'm grateful. So I'm from Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. If you're not sure where that's from, find Wall Street in New York City, draw a straight line down through the water, and that's where I am. I have a home group. Its name is By the Book. I have a sponsor. She knows she's my sponsor. She's not a sponsor in name only. I sponsor other women, and I also have a service sponsor for the love of AA. Sometimes you guys really bug me and bring out those character defects in me, but I want AA to exist long after I'm gone. So, now that I've gone through my statistics, let's get into 6 and 7. I come out of 4 and 5 with a whole bunch of awareness of I'm squirmy, fearful, I take things personally, I'm oversensitive, and I'm really needy, and I'm judgmental, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And what it really boils down to is I'm selfish and self-centered, and that is the chief of my character defects that enacts all these other behaviors out of me. But I come out of 4 and 5 going, of course I don't want to be these things. Yeah, I don't want to show up to work tomorrow and be fearful and afraid. And I don't want to stand at the water cooler and gossip about other people anymore. And yeah, I want God to remove these things from me. But I also got to remember that I can't live under the delusion that I just say that 7-step prayer in the morning and then God just takes these things from me and things just roll right off my back, because now I am at step 6 and step 7, which happened, when I got there. I'm like, we're finally making progress in the steps, right? 2 really short paragraphs. I'm like, we're finally getting anywhere. Basically, when I'm done saying the 7-step prayer, I'm basically on step 9 because I've already made my 8th step list. So I'm like, wow. But the longer that I'm sober, the more that I realize that everything that I do here, it's my opinion that everything from the beginning of the first page that we read all the way up into the 7-step prayer is perhaps a step 6, where I'm becoming entirely willing and finding things objectionable. Those are the 2 key principles in step 6. I've got to be entirely willing, and I've got to find these things objectionable. So I just told you, I come out of 4 and 5 going, of course these things sound objectionable. I don't want to be fearful, squirmy, and afraid anymore, so I'm just not going to act that way. And I think I'm going to say the prayer in the morning, and then God's going to do his thing. But that's not really what this is about. There's a part that I have to do and play, and I'm very much involved in this. I come out of 4 and 5 with a lot of awareness. The old ideas and beliefs, the result was nil until I let go absolutely. And then the 7-step question of it's not whether or not I'm willing to be free of this defect or that defect. It's really whether I still cling to something that I'm not ready to let go of. And what that comes from in the 12 and 12, it says fear, the chief activator of my defects. If you told me when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous before I took the steps that I was feeling like I'm not enough, that I feel like I'm inferior when I'm around other people, that I'm afraid that I'm not going to be loved, liked, or adored, I would have said, I don't feel that way. See, I have an incredibly big ego that rises up and I want to be the actor. I want to present my stage character to the world. And I didn't know any of this stuff. It is the longer that I'm sober, the more that I have become aware of these things. I hear people say often that defects are survival mechanisms that no longer serve me. Well, I'm not the one to be served anymore. And I start learning that in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I'm supposed to serve you instead of looking to be loved, comforted, and understood. I'm supposed to learn how to love, comfort, and understand, but I can't bring that about on my own. And so it is through this awareness of this brokenness in me, and that you like me, they like ourselves, as the sick man's prayer says, that you are broken like me too. Whether or not you're a cocaine addict, an alcoholic, or just an everyday Joe, there's 244 other 12-step programs, because many of us in this world have character defects, have spiritual malady, right? But I didn't know that my character defects are what I call defenses or defaults, are the things that I default to that are familiar to me. And many of them are my old ideas and beliefs. So I like to say a character defect is often a resentment of who I think I am. And what I mean by that is I think I'm not enough. I think I'm not loved. I think I'm not smart enough. I think I'm not respected enough. And when I believe these things about me, I have to become something other than I am. And that's where these defects of character get unleashed onto you. On page 73, which is technically our fifth step, it says, more than most people, this is the big book, the alcoholic leads a double life. I'm very much like the actor. To the outer world, I present my stage character. This is the one I like my fellows to see. See, when you aren't telling me that I'm amazing, wonderful, and a good daughter or a good wife, these character defects or defenses end up coming out on you, because you need to make me feel good. Then I won't ever get mad. And it's absolutely insane. So when I say a character defect is often a resentment of who I think I am, it's because I have these old ideas and beliefs. They're buried unconsciously in me until I do the work. And the longer that I'm sober, the more I see these things appearing, that I'm acting in ways where I feel not enough. So I have to become a stage character and become something other than I am, to be liked, loved, adored, respected, whatever it may be, because I want to enjoy a certain reputation. And see, people that I make demands on people to supply me with these things. And isn't that what we're talking about when I come out of my fourth step, where I'm looking for my self-esteem, my security, my ambition, right? But I've been walking around my entire life playing a victim to you, going, you make me feel. When no one has the power to make me feel any certain way. What I've done is I've assigned you, here you go, MJ. You can have more power over my mind and my emotions than I have. Here you go. Because I've never once wanted to take responsibility for myself and where these things come from, these old ideas and beliefs that I'm not good enough, that I'm not heard, that I'm not the best at my job, that I'm not smart enough, that God's love isn't going to take care of me. Or that God's love isn't going to reach me where I'm at when I'm in this feeling and craziness that I'm going on, right? So I have to, again, become something other than I am to get what I want. Because the chief activator of those defects of character are I want, I need, something's missing, and I'm going to handle and make sure that I get, I want, I need, something's missing. And I will go to any lengths to get that. And that's the insanity, that I don't know what it is that I really suffer from. And that's why I say everything that we do here, all the way to this 7-step prayer, is me finding out what these things are and getting that awareness so that hopefully I find them objectionable. But that's not the end. See, I've been overserved in fearful, squirmy, needy self-consciousness. And I can't do anything about it. That's the crazy thing. I was always trying to self-engineer a better version of myself. You know what? My mom really bugs me. She has quite a bit of mental illness on her end. And you know what? My blood just boils sometimes being around her. And now that I'm sober almost 8 years, right? I should be better. I should be more spiritual by now. I should be spiritual Beth. After all, I'm in a program. I work 12 steps, right? And what I've had to learn through these defects of character, these defenses, see, I like to use anger on my mom and other people. I've used anger all my life. I was called an angry child all my life. I would say that's one of the defects of character. It's a defense that I use. I didn't know that anger is really fear. But I like anger because anger feels like power to me. And I've always wanted some kind of power, but lack of power is our dilemma. And now that I'm Miss Spiritual Beth in a 12-step program, right? I tell myself I should always be a good daughter, and if I'm not being a good daughter, then there's something wrong with me. And there's that old idea and belief again that I'm bad, that I'm not enough, that I'm not a good daughter. And I'm not going to be able to fix that on my own. But I think when I come out of 6 and 7, I'm going to be a good daughter. I'm not going to judge my mom. I'm not going to get angry. And then I end up getting angry at her. I've learned through character defects, it's normally through failing, falling, pain, that I begin to surrender because I begin to realize where I default to, these defenses that I go to. And thank God I have the awareness today. And that instead of judging myself for not being able to handle my mom and be Miss Spiritual Beth all the time, maybe it's possible that my blood is going to boil at times. And to stop fooling myself as to what's actually going on in me. The gift that I get is that I can't on my own power be an amazing, wonderful daughter at all times. And I cannot use self to create a better version of self. I cannot get up in the morning and just say positive affirmations and say the prayer and think that God's going to take every one of these things from me. It doesn't work that way. I have a role and I have a responsibility in this 6 and 7. And that first role in step 6 is the willingness from my awareness to say, wow, there it is again, and I'm going to need a lot of God. And to realize that I'm not a self-improvement project that's going to fix me. What ends up happening if I try to fix me, I'm going to be a good daughter today. I'm not going to be fearful, squirmy, and afraid. And I'm not going to tell off bad Brad at work for how much work he's given me. I end up with a self-centered version of myself when I rely on me. Self-reliance has failed me. In our big book on page 62, it says, actually, let me start off on the page after that. It says, being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. That's what I come out of 4 and 5 with, knowing the common manifestations of what happens to Beth, how Beth shows up with her defenses and things that she defaults to. I default to anger because it's familiar to me. I default to anger because I love to try to manipulate people into acting right because I've written rules for you on how you need to treat me in order for me to feel okay. Because everything about my character defects is all designed for me to get what I want. It's absolutely insane. So being convinced that self, it's a little s self. It's not the capital S self, the higher power, the God that resides in me. It's a self. It's not me. It wasn't me crawling around on the floor looking for crack cocaine in the middle of a rug. That's that self I could not control. I wouldn't do that today. What's that self? That's not me. So we look at the bondage of self, aka ego, and how that shows up and manifests in my life. I consider its common manifestations, and the gift that I get is I become awake and aware. Now, I want to stay awake and aware, and how I do that is through the disciplines of 10 and 11. And the longer I'm sober and the more I have conscious contact with God and the more I answer those questions in my nightly inventory, the more I realize where God isn't working in my life, so that upon awakening, it's not about what are my plans for the day. That's just called basic 101, showing up to life, knowing what's on my calendar. It's about knowing where God wasn't working in my life yesterday, where I'm defaulting to, and where I might default to, and defenses that might come up today when dealing with certain people like my mom, or bad Brad at work, so that I know where I'm going to need more God, because I am not going to improve myself in these areas, because I still want everybody to make me feel amazing. Brad, don't you know how much work you gave me? I can't possibly do that. And I forget that I need God's power going into these things. Maybe I've told myself a really scary movie about I'm not going to be able to do all that work, but maybe I will be, and I'm future tripping about what may or may not happen. See, I don't know these things, and that's why I've got to watch how I'm showing up to life. See, I've been overserved in these fearful, squirmy, needy, self-conscious feelings, and it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. It's also not about resenting my human condition. See, God doesn't take all these things from me. Anybody that says that all their character defects have been removed, good luck. I think God has lessened some of them for me, but I still have many of them. The gift that I get is that I get to accept my human condition, that of myself I will always be fearful, squirmy, not enough, feeling like I'm not loved, and enacting these character defects. But the gift is that I have amends for when I am human, and I do unleash all these character defects on people. Because I still have old ideas that crop into my life. I have to find them objectionable, though. That's the key to step 6. If I do not find them objectionable, I'm going to continue to unleash these things on new people. So again, it's not a self-improvement project so that I can make me like myself better, or maybe even make me like you better. It's really about surrender and the humility. The humility to go to God and find that I often fall asleep in my day. It's about awakening to these old ideas and beliefs that I carry with me that unleash these things on you. And then I've sat back and I've said, well, why doesn't God take all these things from me? Well, I think we get the answer in the 12 and 12. God doesn't strike me white as snow. And this is just my thoughts and opinions, but I think if God took these things from me and struck me white as snow, then I would have no reason to continually to seek God. The gift that I get is my humanness and my brokenness, and I need not be resentful towards myself for being human and being imperfect and sometimes unleashing on my mom or judging myself because my blood is boiling with my mom. The gift that I get is the awareness so that I can either limit my time so that I don't unleash on her, or so that I can humbly go to God in the moment that that feeling crops up. Because 6 and 7 isn't something in the morning. It's more of an in the moment. In the moment, the fearful, squirmy, angry thoughts start going. In this moment, God, I need to humble myself to you and ask for a new perspective so that I don't do damage and so that I can be useful to you. The whole crux of step 7 is to remove enough of me so that I can be useful to others. It says on page 62 of the big book, it says, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. It doesn't say Beth makes that possible. I've got to remember the common manifestations that I'm up against. See, ego comes from a place of lack and limitation, or a lack and attack. And I've got to realize that that bondage of self, that ego, is telling me illusions and delusions throughout my day that I'm going to believe the lie that I'm lacking and limited in some way. We learn that deep down inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. What I'm trying to do throughout my day is keep conscious contact with God, but it's not humanly possible to be perfect. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. The gift that I get by working these 12 steps is I learn about this lack and limitation that causes lack and attack to enact these defects of character, these defenses. And so throughout my year sober, I'll give you some examples of what God has shown me, because in the beginning, it's like, yeah, I'm judgmental. Yeah, I take things personally. But what it's become the longer that I'm sober and the more I have conscious contact is that these character defects, they're cunning. The ego is cunning, baffling, and powerful. And so what they do is they show up wearing different colored shirts that I don't actually realize what the character defect is that I'm about to unleash on people, because it's cunning. And so the insanity is that it becomes a new level, a new devil. The more I peel back this onion, the more these things get revealed in different ways to me. I lost my job during COVID and I'm interviewing for another job. I'm late to that interview. And see, what the mind does is it plays a really scary movie that I'm always the star of. And it makes that I'm late into a really big deal in my mind. It turns out it's not that big of a deal to anybody else. I'm a few minutes late. But for me, I make it all about me, 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 because the selfish self-centeredness, the root of my troubles, it shows up in that way where everything's about me, and then I play this really scary movie and I begin to worry about what you think of me. A lot of my inventory at night is fear of what other people think of me. But if you asked me that when I came into this program, I have an incredibly big ego that rises up and says, I'm not fearful and afraid. I don't care what you think of me. But I behave like I do. And I didn't know that. So this scary movie starts playing of what you think of me. And then it tells me, let's be fearful and afraid. I should be perfect. I should be above making mistakes, which again are illusions and delusions that I can fall into, which is what all 1 through 6 is about these illusions and delusions that I fall into. I mean, Bill's whole first 6 pages about the illusions and delusions. I have arrived and I need the applaud and the praise. And isn't that me? I can be so relatable to Bill's story where I think all that stuff on the outside is going to make me feel okay. And as long as I can just get that, I'll be okay. But meanwhile, I'm unleashing all these defenses and defects on all of you, and I don't even think I'm doing it. Because I live under the delusion that if I can wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world, I'll just manage well. So I don't even see that this illusion or delusion that I'm telling myself is that I should be above making mistakes. And I learned that I'm never going to be perfect. And that I'm human and I'm broken and I do make mistakes, but I can fall into this perfectionistic dream, this Hallmark card that I compare life to, that I should always, be on time and I should never make mistakes. And then the delusion and the character defect that I'm about to release is that I'm so selfish and self-centered that I've internalized all this stuff that people are displeased with me. And that if people are displeased with me, that says something about who I am. And then I've lost that conscious contact with God, and I've gone into believing the lie that I can self-rely on what I have to say to me. You're an idiot. You set 3 alarms to show up to that meeting. And then pride in reverse shows up. I never thought of guilt as one of my character defects or defenses, but then it starts to guilt me, and I'm no longer present to the moment because I'm having a good think about me, and I'm displeased with me. And I forget that when I make a mistake in my humanness, it says nothing about who I am. But yeah, there are consequences sometimes to showing up to a meeting late. And I don't like facing the fact that I'm an imperfect human. And so then what ego does is it says, I'm going to have a good think about me. I'm going to beat the crap out of me, which again is pride in reverse and is a self-pity character defect. So I started that new job. There's a big learning curve. Stubborn pride and ego telling me, you should be smart. You should know everything by now. And then it starts telling me I'm not smart enough, and I'm afraid, and I start getting paralyzed in fear that I'm not going to be able to finish this project in time. See, what ego does, what these character defects do, is they trick me in this telling me that they're my savior. And by making me fearful, squirmy, and afraid, it's going to get me to act right. Because again, I'm back in self-reliance again. And then fear activates my defects. And I forget the truth that I need God's help. I forget the truth, and when I go to God and I have the humility to ask God for a new perspective, when I'm willing to find these things objectionable, often what's ended up happening to me is God keeps revealing to me the truth about me. The truth is I'm a hard worker. The truth is I have a desire to do a good job. But the truth is I need to remember that God has given me power to do that. That God has given me gifts, talents, and ability. But I lose that perspective, which is why I need 6 and 7 in my life. To go to God in the moment that I'm telling myself that scary movie. So that I can ask God for a new perspective. Because otherwise I like to sit in my own stuff. and how arrogant I am to believe what I think about me rather than what God thinks about me. Again, pride in reverse. Some of the intuitive thoughts I've gotten as a result of saying that 7-step prayer and asking God for a new perspective in the moment was trust who God made me to be. How about in my next prayer, God tells me to trust God's plan for my learning curve instead of me sitting in my stuff being fearful, squirmy, and afraid. The gift that I get is a 6 and 7 because my perspective is shot with the manifestations of self, the old ideas and beliefs. See, the truth is that God is my employer, but I forget that. And I live in the delusion that I should get this job right away or I'm a failure because I'm back in self-reliance instead of conscious contact with God. And then I can't be useful because I'm playing the tape in my head. I'm playing my own scary movie. Every book, every show, every movie we've ever watched, there's always some type of conflict. There's always some tragedy. And what I like to do is be the own tragedy in my own scary movie. And so ego shows up and it bonds me into those defects of character that I have to become someone other than I am to get what I want. I need something's missing because I have been overserved. The 12 and 12, it talks about God's intended use versus my misuse. And it is years later that I'm starting to realize that the things that God has gifted me with are blessings and assets, and they can also be used wrongly. One of those things is judgment. Boy, can I be really judgmental of you. See, God has given me judgment, or what I'd rather call discernment. Holy right-mindedness to decide if something is good for me or bad for me, but I use it wrongly with judgment. Because somehow by judging you, it makes me feel better about me, because if I can look down on you, and it's absolutely insane. One of the mantras I have to use is, how can I judge another brother or sister when God's eyes are staring back at me? But that doesn't last long. See, I have to have a spiritual experience and allow God to revolutionary change these things. And it doesn't happen on my timing. Why? I think it doesn't happen on my timing for a couple of reasons. One of them, because God is going to use these things. My dark past now serves a purpose to help others, that I get to share these stories with other people, to say, you like me, they like ourselves, that I don't feel so alone when I come to a meeting and I get to share my bad behavior, but I also get to share the solution with you. I also think that it ties back to page 84 in a big book where it talks about the promises, where it says, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. See, it talks in the 7-step prayer about good and bad. I don't know what's good and bad. Sometimes God uses the bad things so that I can help others. Sometimes God uses these things so that I have to go through enough pain so that I become willing to surrender these things. The gift that I get is that my dark past is useful today, but I still am very much plagued by these defenses or defects that I like to default to because they are familiar. And God doesn't take all of them when I want him to. One of them is the self-righteous anger, and I talked a little bit about anger, and anger really being fear. I'm finding we all like to watch our own scary movie about how everyone else sucks. I hope I'm not alone in that. See, there's a perverse payoff for me being angry. And that perverse payoff is that I can stay at the center of my own universe with me at the middle, everything else spinning around me, and I can call it justified. I ride the subway to work. There's two stories that I'm going to tell you. They're almost the same. A man steps on my toe and gets off the train. Doesn't turn around and say he's sorry. What begins brewing in me is how dare he, and now I've made myself the victim to someone who is not asking for that kind of power over me, but how dare he? I am now a victim. And that is one of the things that I like to default to, because it feels like power to me because it's familiar. And it's absolutely insane that somebody that's not asking for that kind of power over me, I'm going to make myself a victim to him because how dare him. But the truth is he didn't make me feel good about me. He should know what his lines are interacting with me, and he didn't get the memo when he woke up this morning. How dare he? See, I'm so entitled with the selfish self-centeredness, and I had no idea. The second story is the same thing happens. I'm on the subway and someone steps on my toe. But this gentleman turns around and says, oh my God, Beth, I'm so sorry. See, I don't have the same physical, emotional, mental reaction to the second man because my pain matters. And he justified it. And he made me feel okay about me. In Bill's emotional sobriety letter, he talks about where I've made demands on you to make me feel good about me, where I've looked for my security, my prestige, my romance outside of myself, because isn't that what I do? I'm looking for outside things to fill the hole in the donut, and it's never worked. We hear newcomers come in the room all the time saying, I'm not enough, and I just want to shake them. You're not, because you need a God. The truth is of myself, I am nothing. I must continue to seek this power. I must remember, I'm not the power. I'm not going to change me. But I'm still an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. And when you're wrong, I like to tell you all about it. Isn't that the first bedevilment? Having trouble with personal relationships. I said to my first sponsor, I'm not even in a relationship. She said, Beth, you don't have relationships with people. You have reactionships. Somebody says something you don't like, you're reacting. You do not know how to respond with love. I say this all the time. Show up at a meeting, somebody pronounces anonymity wrong. How many of us have to tell them how to pronounce it correctly? Yeah, that was me. Because there's something in me that tells me that somehow I'm smarter and I need to fix this because it's going to make me feel okay. And that's insane. Absolutely insane. And I need to be restored to sanity. But ego, aka bondage to self, is forever fascinated by a well-nursed grudge. It's forever fascinated by the self-centered indulgence. You ever been on that machine at like one of the great adventure parks and it's spinning around? Well, I imagine myself the one dancing in the middle. I want to be at the center of everything. Because ego is never bored if I have a well-nursed grudge or some self-righteous anger or some justification to indulge in. There's a perverse payoff in it. Like the girl at my home group who really bugs me. Sometimes it's in that moment that I feel that emotional rise in me and that story starts playing. Because you see, if I never had a judgment, preference, or opinion, you would never bug me. But I got a lot of judgments, preferences, and opinions. It's in those moments that I learn to use 6 and 7. I learn to go to God, and sometimes I get an intuitive thought. And last month I got the intuitive thought because I was willing, and I found it objectionable, to pray to God in that moment that the tape started playing about how annoying she is. And what God says to me is, God, Beth, you want peace more than you want her to be different. And when you want peace more than you want her to be different, Beth, you'll be able to be useful to my kids. Now, I don't always get those intuitive thoughts, but there's gaps. We call it the pause when agitated or doubtful. Sometimes those gaps in between my emotions and my mouth, I can have an intuitive thought. And those intuitive thoughts are often, not all the time, because I'm still human, where I'm able to do, see, feel, act as if God would have me do, see, feel, and act when I ask God to help me do, see, feel, and act. And then I sit quietly because humility is the perpetual quietness of the heart. Do nothing when my little snow globe is all stirred up. Nothing good's going to come out of my mouth. I've also learned that part of the character defects that I suffer from are extreme self-consciousness because, again, I'm so fearful and afraid of what you think of me, and I want you to think that I'm amazing and wonderful and smart and beautiful and all the things that make me feel okay, because it's all about me. And I've learned that it's really painful to be self-conscious. And I've learned some tools that I can pick up along with 6 and 7. And that is through prayer that God has given me ideas to get me out of me. But these are things that I've learned that I default to. And I get some tools, but again, these defects are cunning and they wear a different shirt. But some of the things that I've learned in part of this prayer is to be others focused. Sometimes I need to ask God for a new perspective in the moment because I want the sunlight of the Spirit to shine on me so that it can shine and reflect off of me. And I need to get me out of the way. So some tips and tricks that I've learned are to seek to be interested instead of trying to be interesting. Because when I get uncomfortable and self-conscious, boy, do I like to talk sometimes. Or I'll sit there and internalize everything and have a good think about what I think you think about me, which is really what I'm thinking about is what I think about me. And do you think the same way that I think about me? And that's insane. I've also learned that I need to interview others to get me out of me. Think of others more than myself, but I've still got a mind that's playing that thing when I'm self-conscious, and I've still got to go to God with the humility to ask, good or bad, God, can you help me have a new perspective so that I can show up and be useful to these kids? So that I'm not so in the bondage of self thinking about me. But these things crop up all day long. Like I said, I can't just get up in the morning, say the 7-step prayer and think that God's going to do the rest of it. What God has given me the gift of is that I become aware, awake and aware, and then I get to work on having conscious contact with God throughout my day, which I am no means perfect at it. I'm at work. They had a new lady that sits the cube behind me. She gets introduced to everybody but me. The scary movie starts playing. How dare she? She ran around and she introduced her to everyone but me. She snubbed me. See, part of what we're learning about these common manifestations of self is that I play a really scary movie in my head. It's always all about me. And I need to get what I want out of you, and how dare you for snubbing me? And this is where I need 6 and 7 in my life, to find that objectionable. Stop making it all about me, which I can't do on my power, so I need to go to God in step 7, humbly ask him, help me have a new perspective. That new perspective that I got was, why don't you introduce yourself to her? It's that simple. But on my own power, I don't come up with that. I wish I could say that I just walked around right as snow and I did the right thing all the time, but I don't. Which is why I need this so much in my life throughout my day as I go through. Because I'll tell you something, my husband don't drive right. He's a country bumpkin, moved here to New Jersey, right? I'm right here near New York City. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, do I got something to say about that, because I'm about to unleash all the things on you because I think you could do better to make me feel okay. And so I would say to my sponsor, but he doesn't drive right, and I'm fear for my safety. And what she would say to me, Beth, is, why do you need to emasculate him? And so I look at these old ideas and beliefs, and I would say to her, well, I don't know. She'd say, well, I think you need to pray on that. And I would say, well, I can't control my mouth. And she'd say, given good reason, you could control my mouth. She says, I'm a lot older than you, and you come down to Florida and you drive with me and you don't tell me how to drive. See, God does ask me to do some things like zip it sometimes. So there are choices that I'm given in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm not going to radically change that part of me. And God didn't take it from me right away, and I have caused my husband a lot of anxiety that he just doesn't want to drive anymore. And I'm very, very sorry that I did that to him. The truth is God says that's a bunch of BS, that I can't control my mouth. With God's power, I can control saying what I think. But I gotta humbly go to God and ask him for that help. And then I've got to examine why it feels okay to do that to my husband, but not to my sponsor. Because that's how I show up to life, wanting power and control where I have no right to do that to someone. I do damage still to this day. The gift that I get is that I have an amends process today where I get to be fully human in my brokenness instead of judging it as bad and sitting around having a good ask of why doesn't God take all these things from me? It is on God's timing. That mother of mine who absolutely drives me nuts. I have unleashed a lot of anger on her over the years in sobriety because I want her to act right. My mom is not able, she doesn't work a 12-step program. She has a mental illness that's untreated. And she's never been a mom, so I have old ideas and beliefs about what a mom should be. Because I've been shooting all over the place my entire life. I should, they should, the world should. In other words, common manifestations of self. I want to play God in your life. And I'm going to get you to act right. Because I'm going to unleash the character defects on you. Not proud of it. But on God's timing and in God's way, God had to bring me enough pain to get to the point that I would surrender. 2 years ago, my mother tried to kill herself and broke her arm in 7 places. My mom ended up in the hospital. And it was a very sad situation. I would find out that my mom doesn't have much money to live off for the rest of her life. She's been mentally ill and spending it like crazy. And see, those character defects want to enact because it's all about me and what's going to happen to me if you don't, am I going to have to take care of you? And the scary movie. What I'm aware of today is that scary movie most of the time that I'm playing about what may or may not happen, aka fear, which is going to drive those defects to get what I want, to make sure that that doesn't happen, that I don't have to have all her problems inherited on me because it's all about my selfish and self-centered, instead of relying on God and saying, I don't know. I don't know what God has planned for me, and I don't know what God has planned for you, and I need to be in 6 and 7 before this stuff comes out. The humility, the quietness of heart to say, God, I don't know what your plan is. But God, I'm going to need you to show me what my next footstep is to be. But see, I want the whole damn path lit. That's how I show up to life with these defects of character. I want to know I'm okay. I want to know that she's going to be okay. Blah, blah, blah. The scary movie's playing in my head. The tape is going. I got 10% of the facts. She's in the hospital, and I have written 90% of the story. It is in those moments. May I humbly go to God and ask him for a new perspective. In those moments, I am shown where my next footstep needs to be, but I am not shown where the whole path is, and that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't like being uncomfortable, and I don't like not knowing. Which is why those steps beforehand tie everything together. Where am I in the unmanageability of my life? Where am I in the insanity of my life? Where am I playing God, wanting to be God? I may be gracious, I may be kind. Oh, that's not working for me. Then I'm going to use anger. In this moment, God, the common manifestations of self, they're not me. I need to have conscious contact with God so that I can get back to knowing that I'm always okay, even though I don't feel okay. My feelings are good servants, but they're not good masters. And my feelings often enact the defects of character because I want to feel amazing and comfortable. I want my security, my self-esteem, my pride, my ambition from you. And God says, no, 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 Beth. No one is ever going to fill the hole in the donut. What you need, Beth, is you need God consciousness, God esteem. And that is often what I am shown when I am praying my 7-step prayer is, God, in this moment, give me that new perspective. And what God often shows me is that I don't need things on the outside to fill the inside. I need more of the insight to know the truth about who I am. The truth about who I am, we say in society all the time, the truth will set you free. I didn't understand that meaning of the truth will set you free. The truth is that I'm loved by I'm a loving child of God. I have always been taken care of by God through many things that have been hurricanes and tornadoes in my life. I have always come out the other side. There is a beginning, middle, and an end to everything that I go through. It's just when that middle is really long, boy, oh boy, that ain't quick enough, God. Hurry up, back to being in self and back to enacting those things because I need, something's missing because again, I've been overserved. See, God has shown me that I need do nothing with my mom. My mom ended up willingly moving into a retirement home. My mom's house has been sitting on the market for 2 years. I know how much money she has left, and if she doesn't sell that house in the next year, I don't know where she's going to end up. But I don't need to show up like a tornado in her life, trying to fix, manage, and control all of it, and having a conversation with her every time I see her that she needs to do something. Because again, it's just all about me and my fears and the way I feel, the way I want to feel. She's never going to fill that hole. She's never going to show up to life and make me feel like the daughter I've always wanted to feel like from a mother that's incapable of being a mother. And so those feelings of not enough are the gift that I get. Because that's what keeps me seeking God. Realizing that when I show up there and she unleashes and says all the 4-letter words about me, that I don't have to believe her anymore, that she doesn't have to be the arbiter of my value, that I get to go to God in 6 and 7 and I get to get right-sized on who my God is, how big my God is, and what God thinks about me, and whatever else God wants to put on my heart or in my mind in that moment. 6 and 7, like I said, are not a self-improvement project where I just sit around knowing how I need to act around her. I need a lot of help. The gift that I get is I get that help. And sometimes when I'm bad, the gift that I get is that I get to share that with you. And I get to share the solution. And the gift that I also get is sometimes these things get pretty painful. I got married. Today's my 3-year wedding anniversary. My mother, thanks Denise, my mother did not show up at my wedding. It was very painful. I wanted my mom to be at my wedding. If my mom showed up at my wedding, I knew there was going to be drama because my dad was there. My dad left her after 30 years of marriage to marry a deaf woman. My mom has a lot of resentment there. See, I don't know how God is going to use these things, but if I continue to keep showing up right, God eventually shows me down the road how these things can be useful. Because my mom didn't show up at my wedding, that was the greatest gift that I ever got. Because I told you I've used anger and manipulation from my mom for years. My mom showed up after my wedding 6 months later. Hadn't seen her. Showed up on my doorstep with a bag full of goodies, wanting to sweep it all underneath the carpet again. It's in those moments. Can I be kind, gracious? Not on my own power. It's in those moments that I get an intuitive thought to tell my mom, Mom, I think you, like me, suffer kind of from the same thing where you take 10% of the facts and write 90% of the story. And my mom went, oh God, yes, I do that. See, at 6 years sober after my wedding, because my mom didn't show up at my wedding where I was fearful, squirmy, and unleashing all those cats on everyone, my mom said to me that she's felt like she's not enough since she was 6 years old. And she told me that when she was 6 years old, she wanted to kill herself. 6 years old. And what her father told her was, go to bed, tomorrow's another day, and her mom dismissed her. Good or bad, God has used these things because I finally had the realization at 6 years sober that my mom suffers from what I suffer from, but without picking up a substance. That they, like ourselves, are perhaps spiritually sick, that we have made them neurotic, that the family is to some extent ill, as our book says. God opened my heart that day to have compassion for my mom and see her in an entirely different light, on God's timing and in God's own way, good or bad, not on my timing. I've been able to show up in a different way most of the time for my mom, having the realization that my mom, like me, they like ourselves. She can't help it. She doesn't have a 12-step program. My mom is like a dog with rabies. I don't stick my hand in the cage with a dog with rabies, but I don't blame the dog for having rabies. See, today God helps me to love my mom the way a daughter should. Maybe I don't love my mom the way a daughter should, but I love my mom today with God's help the way God would have me be. And that's not possible on my own power. And it's taken time, pain, uncomfortability, things that I try to avoid at all cost. But that's fairy tale living. Today I get to be in the present moment, awake and aware of the defenses and defaults that I go to, so that in the moment I can ask God for a new perspective. And in the next moment, when the head starts sharing all that crap with me again, I can keep going to God as these things crop up. Things that I still cling to, that I have my claws on. These are the things that I'm looking at in sobriety. It is through 10 and 11 that I keep awake and aware to these things that come up for me, that show up wearing different colored shirts, that show up in new ways. Because like I said, guilt was not something I thought I had. See, guilt tells me with my mom that if she doesn't expect too much from me, then I will never let myself down or let her down. So I can just keep behaving the way I'm behaving, because who gives a crap? But it's guilt. A character defect, a defense that ego says is going to get me to act right around her. I've got to remember the truth about me. I am a loving child of God that has access to power and wisdom through these prayers, through staying with you, through sharing in my brokenness and hearing about your brokenness, and realizing that the best I will ever be is human and broken, and God loves me as I am, not as I should be, because none of us are as we should be. The gift that I get today, it is the conscious contact to realize that I'm not the piece of crap, I'm not enough, and that I need God in my life to get glimpses of hope like that. To learn how to show up to life in a way that I never thought was possible, that only God makes it possible to be this daughter, to be the wife that my husband doesn't have to get in the car and go, God, I don't want to drive with her, or I'll drive. The gift that I get is I learn how to deal with uncomfortability, not getting my way, and realizing I need, something's missing, is the big delusion and the big lie, and the only thing that's ever going to fill that hole is God. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for your share. You were heard. Appreciate you and grateful for you. Let's all take a moment. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. I'd like to now hand back to Beth, who's going to take us out with a prayer or reading of your choice. Beth, please.
Okay, thank you everyone for doing service and for listening to me. Let's close out with the 3rd step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.